Cecil vs. Mark is the best thing we have gotten in Invincible, period. It's just a moral debate, one as old as time, that of liberty or security, and in this show about superheroes with a dictatorial regime coming to conquer Earth, it just works so well. Invincible Season 3 is excellent, easily the best showing of any season thus far. I've already made a video talking about how the trust-based conflicts have really been taking the show in an interesting place and building up interesting stories going forward, and the Mark-Cecil conflict is so massive in scale and consequence that it deserved to be discussed more in depth. I think Cecil has somehow become one of the show's most interesting characters. When I first binged Season 1 of the show, I couldn't even remember his name. I thought he was a plot device character without much depth, but Season 2 showed us that there was so much more to him. He was running a ship which had new holes poked in it every day. He had to deal with the repercussions of Omni Man, of Mark's self-worth issues stopping his abilities to help the world, Angstrom Levy, Mark's multiple-month trip to space, the alien parasites, Donald finding out about everything, and then Anessa. The flashback showed us that he used to just be interested in helping people, being the good guy. He paid for it too with the prison sentence, but he left, leaving a positive impact on the prison, turning it into a great place for the inmates, although some of them died as a result of this. But what turned him into the character that we now know is when he met Omni Man. Someone of divine strength showing up out of the blue to protect the world. Cecil knew it was a lie, or at least not the whole story, but he still worked with Nolan for the betterment of the Earth. And time again, we see that he isn't just some suit who sends other people out to do his dirty work. He risked his life to meet Omni Man that first time. In Season 1, he put himself in harm's way time and time again, even getting choked by Nolan at one point, and now by Mark twice this season. And it has been a lie that the White Room is for Cecil's safety. He can teleport. I think it was a test Cecil was willing to risk his life for to see if he can fully trust Mark, which now he obviously cannot, and that is something that's going to make the show a whole lot more interesting, that new dynamic. But we should also look at this from Mark's perspective. The only thing that stops him from being like Omni Man, the only reason that Mark Grayson is not evil in this universe is because he wants to be moral. Better, I think he needs it, or else he would quickly fall into the dark side. His dad didn't value humans, he didn't play by the rules, and he destroyed everything. And Mark's new need for morality comes up in two different ways for this debate. First is what I've been discussing, the need to avoid killing, to be good. And this is what Mark strives for, though he is destined to fail at, since after killing the Angstrom Levy, he just lets loose against the Multipaws, against those crooks in episode 3, and these cyborgs. He said he doesn't want to kill, but we're approaching a point where that's merely a platitude, and he's seeming to drop that more and more when that mindset inconveniences him. I think it could be a big tension point later in the season where Oliver lets loose. Mark tries to tone it down, but with Cecil just trying to put things in order to regain control, Mark could easily crack again and kill someone, maybe even Cecil. But the second and much more interesting perspective held by Mark is that of villains not being able to reform. I think this is obviously mainly just a response to Omni Man's arc in Season 2. If villains can reform, Mark might need to forgive his father, something that both challenges him morally, but also that just scares him. And redeeming villains is the only option. You either kill them, getting rid of the problem for good, or you become Omni Man or an Oliver, or you can redeem them and use them for good. You can't do both or none, and these contradictory stances held by Mark show his hypocrisy and does a great job of proving Cecil's point. Mark can flip out on a coin drop because he isn't actually principled, he's just making excuses to avoid these hard decisions. But when that mask falls, things could get bad quick. But, like Invincible has always been written, it isn't as simple as saying that Mark is in the wrong. Cecil put a bomb in his head. It might not be a big deal while Mark doesn't know anything about it in Season 2, but the moment that he learns about it, it would basically turn Mark into a slave, needing to do what Cecil says or else face death. And the best part about all of this is that the whole standoff could have been avoided if Cecil just trusted a little bit more. Eve was waking up when he sent Darkwing and the Cyclops down to free the supers. He showed his cards too early because he couldn't trust someone else with the fate of the world who was capable. Mark started destroying the bots because Cecil didn't trust him, that he just wanted to talk. These things could have been avoided if Cecil just trusted. Mark wouldn't be talking to him if this didn't happen if he trusted Eve. My stance on the bomb is that it was a necessary countermeasure, but it should have never been brought up. Mentioning it to try to trap Mark is just Cecil's fault. Mark's conflicting morals, which escalated everything, is where he messed up. But then the whole fight itself is also just rich with subtext on the characters. Mark kills the cyborgs as soon as it begins interrupting his conversation, showing that, yeah, he can kill. These aren't humans, but it's still blood on his hands. Cecil showed his hand when the red lights went on and just showed all the other bots, again showing his distrust and making things worse. Mark flew to the Guardians HQ instead of anywhere else, and I think that's because he thinks he can win their trust, and that Cecil would once again show his hands and mess things up. And Mark ripping apart the bots at the end like Nolan tore apart the old Guardians of the Globe was just such a frightening callback. Both characters did bad stuff, but the thing that shines Mark in a slightly better light is that he tries to be the good guy. Now, does he sometimes lose that facade and become terrifying like we see? Yes. But he always tries to do the right thing, while Cecil just rushes things because he can't trust anyone. He doesn't care if other people like him. He's gonna do it, but that will bite him in the butt, as we see. The fight isn't as simple as freedom versus security, because that would just end up with Cecil being strawman, because freedom. Instead, what we get is this clash of ideas, but instead of it being about the ethics themselves that are battling it out, it's the characters who fight for those values, bringing them up with their own problems and making this more about the characters' faults than the faults of each perspective. Invincible is brilliant, and we aren't even halfway through the season, and there's just so much to discuss. Like I said earlier, the whole narrative of trust keeps coming out, about the issues with it and how it causes conflicts like that, and I have a whole video about it which you can watch here. See you in a few days as I can talk about this new episode, because I'm sure there's a lot to talk about, because it's Invincible.